1960 would see the release of one of the most iconic horror movies of all time, Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho, that would be responsible for inspiring future slasher classics like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Halloween, and Friday the 13th. Psycho would then return in the middle of the slasher craze during the 1980s in the form of Psycho 2, released 22 years after the original, a film that not only had to compete with the modern slashers of the time, but also had the task of living up to one of the most iconic horror movies in history. Greetings all you movie junkies and entertainment lovers, and welcome to another review. Today we're going to be talking about Psycho 2. Released and set 22 years after the first film, serial killer Norman Bates, once again played by Anthony Perkins, returns home after years of treatment at a mental institution for the criminally insane. His release is protested by Marion Crane's sister, Lila, once again played by Vera Miles. Norman decides to move back into his long-dead mother's infamous old house next to the Bates Motel. However, he soon finds himself being tormented by mother's demands and begins to question his own sanity. Is Norman being haunted by the spirit of his dead mother, or is someone trying to drive him insane again? And when the murders start happening again, the film will have you guessing the truth right until the very end. The film was directed by Richard Franklin, who had previously directed the Australian thriller Road Games, and was written by Tom Holland. No, not that one. The Tom Holland who would later go on to direct other 80s horror classics like Fright Night and Child's Play. So for a sequel that was made and set 22 years after the original film, how well does it stand up? Well, for one, Psycho 2 doesn't fall into the trap that a lot of other legacy sequels do, which is to rely heavily on much of the same elements that worked in the first film. While Psycho 2 does have a lot of references to the original Psycho, it is very much its own story, instead of just being a rehash of the first film, which it could have very easily been. This film is very much an introspective on Norman Bates himself, and for much of the film we the audience are guessing as to what is actually going on just alongside Norman himself. Is he going crazy again? Is someone trying to trick him? Is mother alive somehow? Who actually is his mother? All these questions are what makes the film great and keeps you guessing throughout almost the entire thing. It's a truly suspenseful and thrilling sequel that gets the balance right between old and new. And a large part of that is Anthony Perkins' fantastic performance that I would honestly argue is even better than his performance in the original film, as he manages to really make us feel for Norman as he tries to move on and put the past behind him. Another really great element in the film to me is the original score by the late great Jerry Goldsmith, that although is not the same as the Bernard Herrmann score from the original, works really well here and very much echoes the same feeling of the original film. The one and only issue that I can honestly say that I have with this film is one aspect that I think could have been executed just a little bit better, which is Norman being allowed to return to his home where all the murders took place previously. If there's any location that could potentially set him off again, it's going to be this place. And the only real explanation that's given in the film is that Norman wants to face his past, while the doctor suggests against it. So the fact that he's allowed to go back there without any kind of supervision seems a little odd. But you could also argue that that very much is the idea, which is also something that's brought up in Psycho 3, and that question of should someone like Norman Bates even be allowed to re-enter society at all. Overall, Psycho 2 is an incredibly overlooked film that works really well as a sequel to the original Psycho, though not quite as good. The filmmakers understood that they could not simply repeat the success of the original and managed to construct an original story that is able to stand on its own. And while the original Psycho is praised as one of the greatest horror movies ever made, Psycho 2 rightfully deserves its own praise as one of the greatest horror sequels ever made. Thanks for watching this review. Be sure to subscribe for more videos, and until next time, be sure to consume as much entertainment as humanly possible, and I will see you in the next video.